thank you very much for joining us at this this session in M2M Innovation World Congress. I've got 4 panelists who are joining me. I'll be introducing them a little later. But we have representatives from Eurotech, Sigfox, ThingWorx, and River. And we're going to discuss and debate a little about what's happening, what's happening in the world of connected devices. Just 18 months ago, it seems that M2M was all the rage. Right now, everybody's talking about IoT, and M2M seems slightly passé. So I just want to set out some of the things that are changing, and then turn it over to our panelists to talk and present some of their viewpoints and some of the specialities of their companies, because each one of these companies is really quite engaged in that transition from what would have been regarded as a connected environment of the past to what we might think of as a connected environment of the future. And we're just going to let them explain a little about their views. And then what we'll do is we'll move to a panel session and take questions either from the presentations up to that point or other and related questions. And we'll try and get quite a dynamic panel session going. So please do stand by. I may potentially nominate people to ask a question from the audience, so we do want to. So think of some and write some down as we go through. All right. So to start this off, I'm just going to do a very quick presentation myself, just by way of background, and really to highlight the fact that when we talk about a connected world, we're really talking about something that's been around for a very long time. A couple of pictures here. A SCADA solution within a pumping station. These type of industrial SCADA solutions have been around for decades, 30-odd years. They really are nothing new in principle. There have been solutions around which are tracking high-value assets, so things like security vans, etc., and money deliveries and security guards. What's characterised these solutions, though, is that they are associated with things that are very high value. They're difficult to do, and those two things went hand in hand effectively. The fact that it was difficult to develop and deploy these solutions meant that they were really only suitable for situations where you really needed a lot of control, like a nuclear power station, or where there's some very high value assets at stake and at high risk of being stolen or otherwise needing monitoring. So things like cash, etc. And that's the previous sort of telematics would be the way to characterize it, the previous connected world. What we've been doing recently is moving to a situation where the barriers to entry and the costs of deploying these solutions have come down really very significantly. It's a far more open and more flexible environment. It's far easier to conceive of and deploy solutions. And these solutions have been deployed all over the place. So things like sealed air. This is a case of this is an example of servitization. I think is the official is the tag that's being applied to it now. These guys used to sell a machine, and that machine used to make pockets of air that a company like Amazon would use for packing boxes and deliveries. And they were sold as a capex purchase. It was a big machine, an expensive machine, and what they're doing now is providing that as a service, charged per air pocket. Completely different proposition. Gerber Cutter, these guys used to sell, or they still sell, machines for CNC cutters for manufacturing furniture. And they had all sorts of problems with warranty compliance because they didn't know how their machines were being treated in the field. The owners of those machines used to come back to Gerber and say, well, it's gone wrong. Can you fix it, please, under warranty? And actually what had happened is it had been overworked, underserviced, used in environments that are too hot, not sufficiently lubricated, and used in environments which are too humid. And of course it goes wrong. And it goes wrong because it hasn't been treated in compliance with the warranty. And remotely monitoring that device enables them to ensure that it's treated appropriately. Irrigation in Spain, there's a solution there between Telefonica and ABB where they're saving maybe 25% of the water consumption in Andalusia. That's a lot of water consumption saved simply by being able to remotely turn on and off irrigation systems on fruit farms. Gettinger Online, quite a transformational solution. The old situation, I mean, this is an industrial, clinical washing machine. And the old situation used to be that a nurse used to have to sit watching the washing machine, or watching the dishwasher effectively complete its cycle. Because if it didn't complete the cycle, there'd be no instruments to use for operations the next day in a hospital. So they used to just deploy a nurse to watch that machine, and if the cycle didn't finish, they'd restart it and watch the cycle through until finishing. And maybe one time in 100 it wouldn't finish. Whereas what happens now is, that's connected, it's monitored remotely via, I believe it's an iPhone, and the nurse goes home, and if the machine goes wrong and doesn't finish, they go back in and they restart it. It's just a complete transformation in the way in the way that process is managed. There's a few others here, Big Belly Solar, and they will notify when bins are sufficiently full and need emptying to increase the efficiency of garbage collection, etc. There's a whole range of these things, but what characterises these things is they're point solutions. That it's a specific problem, it's a specific solution, and that's what happened with the M2M phase over the last few years. We had a situation where deploying these solutions became far easier. Far lower barriers, far more open frameworks to assist with the implementation of those solutions, but they're all kind of still standalone. These solutions aren't hooked together and integrated and doing things that frankly were not conceived at the time that they were deployed. And that I think is the key to an IoT solution. So what happens in the world of the Internet of Things? And what I've done here is I've just drawn up some random sources of information. So there's some information potentially drawn from a user's smartphone on their location. There's some information drawn maybe from the wider internet in terms of traffic and traffic within a city. There could be information drawn from the consumer's smart meter at home in terms of tariffs and usage, etc. And there's information on the weather. And all of those different things, those could all be individual point solutions. And the point is that they're all drawn together to do something different. And that different thing could be, figuring out where the residents of a household are, how long it'll take them to get home, and therefore how the heating should be configured, taking into account the weather that was going to intervene between that point and when the point in time that we're at and the time when they get home. That's just, there's a possible application you might develop with those four inputs. The point is that it's something that wasn't necessarily conceived at the point that those four were implemented. It's an Internet of Things. It's application. It's taking sources of information and M2M applications and doing something different with them. And that's really the key. And doing and that kind of requirement. With that kind of requirement comes a requirement for far more open frameworks and interworking of data and a far more productized and standardized environment. And that's the phase that we're at now, really. So just highlighting that the sources of information that could potentially be included in these applications are IoT applications, are M2M applications, M2M devices, because those are different from the applications. Corporate IT systems, published data feeds, crowdsourcing, end users, social media, and of course other IoT applications. So IoT applications are much more built at a sort of a data layer, at a slightly abstracted layer. So that's the trend. That's what the future, probably what the future world will look like in terms of everything being connected and interworking. And there's much debate around that exact definition, but it's not really particularly helpful. Much of it's very unhelpful. What's clear about the future, this future environment, is that there are going to be many devices, a lot more connected devices than we have today, particularly distributed devices and smaller devices communicating smaller amounts of information. And that's where our first presenter, Mallorie, will contribute. She's from Sigfox. That's what they do. They support a lot of devices. and she'll talk a little about that. New products and services are key, and we have somebody from ThingWorx who's going to talk about the new products and services and how all these different things can be interworked and combined in a more flexible way going forward. Faster innovation is key. We have somebody from Wind River talking about faster innovation, and also shared capabilities will be key to bring some kind of scale and liquidity to this future environment. And we have Tim from Eurotech to tell us about that. So at this point, I'm going to stop my introduction, and I'm going to introduce Mallorie Claudel, who is the ecosystem and channel manager for Sigfox. So if you'd like to come up here, I will find your presentation.
That's it.
That's it. I don't know how to get it project on full screen. That's the thing.
Stop it. Yeah.
Okay.
I just it's
Page down. Page
okay.
up.
Very easy. Okay, so I put the. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So we'll talk about, in fact, our vision of the Internet of Things market. So, as Jim said, well, the devices and connected devices will be part of our future environment. There is a huge potential, which therefore means as well a huge expectation for Internet of Things. Machina research predicts a market of $450 billion by the years of 2022, while Goldman and Sachs are talking about 28 billion of connected devices by the year 2020. We can see that the market is quite hot. It's there right now. Google acquired Nest for $3.2 billion. Also, PTC bought ThingWorx and Axeda recently. And now we have Samsung buying SmartThings to add, in fact, home appliances to their portfolio. So yes, the market is here, the expectations. Of course, you will tell me, but it has been a while that we are talking about connected devices. That's true. It's not new. So I think that we are talking about M2M for ages, maybe since the year 1988. And when I joined myself this industry in the early 2000 right now, in fact, M2M was expected to drive enormous volume of connected devices. But the reality today, what we can see, is that we've got only few of them out there. So why this? Why it's in fact disappointing? Well, today what we can see is that we've got a great and a fantastic connectivity for smartphone or tablets, PC, and even for in fact the M2M use case, which are requiring high bandwidth and multimedia applications and voices. Okay, so but multimedia bandwidth is coming as well with a certain price. So still the price of the device or terminals are still expensive, and also the price of the data rate plan. While the Internet of Things, well, for Sigfox, and the definition of the Internet of Things will be correspond to small messages. And small messages exchanging, it's the contrary. It requires, in fact, low bandwidth, and also, in fact, low data plan rate. And one point which is very important when we are talking about high bandwidth connectivity, it's not only price, but is also battery life cycle of a device. And Internet of Things need a very long battery life cycle. At least sometimes 5 years, 10 years, even up to 12 years. I was talking about connectivity. Also, we have seen the last past years that many actors try, in fact, to find a solution through short range and local networks. But in fact, for our point of view and what we could see in the market, it's not really appropriate to answer, in fact, the global connectivity which is needed to connect all these small messages devices. So, for Sigfox, it's very clear and obvious that what is missing today, it's a disruptive approach in terms of connectivity. All right, it's not, and it's complementary to the existing networks, to the existing cellular networks, so long range or short range. And this is exactly, in fact, what Sigfox is proposing today in the market. It's to run a global network fully dedicated to the Internet of Things, well, to the connected devices. Because what is really needed to unleash the real potential of the Internet of Things that we are talking for, a billion devices, a billion and trillion dollars market, is to have a long range and a low power network. So Sigfox is operating a global network dedicated to the Internet of Things, so dedicated to the small messages, which is in fact out of the box connectivity. This is very important to be very, very simple. And also it offers a low-cost data rate plan, providing the possibility for the device to be connected for a certain number of years and also to be connected worldwide. So we are not competing with the current mobile operator network or with, I will say, local RF network. It's really a different approach. It's a disruptive approach. And we are, in fact, addressing maybe we'll say 90% of the Internet of Things market. All right. Just here. What is the time? I just said I think the timer. Okay, I'm very short in my presentation. It's okay. So I will go on. So I have more time left. That's cool. Yes. So what is important is that in our vision today we think that everything is here in the market. So we will have the intervention of ThingWorx or River and also Eurotech. But in the value chain, we can see that all the building blocks that are here from, in fact, the chipset manufacturer, which can put in the market a low-cost chipset, to the terminals, up to, in fact, the applicative platform and the system integration into the customer environment. So for us, it's really the moment to build, in fact, momentum in this market. Everything is ready, but once again, from our perspective, what was missing today, it was an effective connectivity solution. And to illustrate my saying, I would like to share with you some worldwide use cases which are in fact showing that bringing this disruptive approach into the connectivity of the Internet of Things, we can really unleash the potential volumes of it. Then the first one is the General Council of the Loiret, which is an area in France, with a project which was in fact to improve the effectiveness of home interventions towards elderly people and dependent people. what is amazing here is that this project usually can take years and years from the concept to a rise. Okay, here it was a very, very short cycle, so of let's say 1 year, where in fact all the building blocks were there, except that the connectivity. And then we could address together with the different partners of the value chain the need of the General Council of Loiret, which was in fact a very simple box. So as I mentioned, out-of-the-box connectivity, because you can imagine that elderly people, they don't have all internet connection, they don't want to be bothered with any cables or whatever. Okay, they don't want also to recharge their device, so no need for a power supply. And also what was also good regarding the health is, in fact, there is lower electromagnetic emissions. Of course, all these solutions should be cost-effective. It means that no adding cost for the General Council of the Loiret, but on the contrary, with a return on investment, which is what we could achieve. And what is very nice is that from the beginning, there is 10,000 devices which are deployed immediately in this area. So once again, we are unleashing volumes. The second one, well, we've got plenty, but the second one is, I like it because it's pet tracking. And it's, of course, locate my dog. But also it's a Fitbit for the dogs. So it's a lot of potential in the United States also, where there is a lot of dogs. And once again, this project wasn't possible so far in the so-called M2M industry because we needed out-of-the-box connectivity, which is not always easy when you have to put a SIM card or local networks, etc., and with very cost-effective connectivity price. So this is what we are offering with long battery life cycle, because of course you don't want to have to recharge your dog collar every day or every 2 days. And also you want to be able to sell this collar everywhere. And as a matter of fact, as soon as this project has been announced, it's incredible because this company, which is called Whistle in the United States, has just had 10,000 pre-orders 10 days after a product announcement, which is quite amazing. And the last one, well, while talking about volumes, it's in fact Securitas. So Securitas choose in fact Sigfox to connect millions of home security devices. I invite you to check the press release, so it's not only me, but it's a real business. And what is amazing, and I will just talk from my experience point of view, as I told you, it has been a while, I'm in the M2M industry. And if I'm taking France, French market today, from the years early 2000 to now, there had been a deployment of something like 7.2 million of M2M SIM cards. Okay, so it took a while to reach these 7.2 million SIM cards dedicated to M2M. And in one business with Securitas, we are talking of several million of objects connected, which is a different level and different scale. Here, why in fact the connectivity was key is that, of course, it's complementary of the GSM technology, which is currently used in the alarm transmission system. But they are looking for a backup, in fact, a backup system. And Sigfox is a perfect fit here. It doesn't add any additional cost on the bill of material, which is the beauty of it. And then there is, of course, it's preserving the battery life cycle and it guaranteeing a better security of transmission. I think that's it. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for that. Next up, I would like to ask Luc Perrard, who is Senior Director of Sales for EMEA for ThingWorx across. And I will just find the presentation. And there you go.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Luc Perrard. I work for ThingWorx, who propose an Internet of Things platform, application enablement platform for the Internet of Things. In this presentation, I wanted to give you our view of what the Internet of Things is for us and what we see, let's say, the challenges and the opportunities that it presents for our customers. And the first one is around the Internet of Things. We hear a lot about definition and about the potential, but what we see is it presents actually the next era of business transformation for companies. It allows them to save cost, to be more successful, to get more revenue, but also to transform completely their business model. We'll see that in a couple of next slides. Also, what we see is that it's a disruptive technology. Mallorie mentioned that actually, just like Sigfox. With this new technology of communication, it's what the Internet of Things brings about is the ability to bring a new billions of devices online, and then have the ability to deliver services for those billions of devices. And this kind of technology has the potential to disrupt the whole industries because of that. And as highlighted as well as the bottom of this slide, we see that this business rewards the early adopters who have the ability to adapt to this new market arriving at maturation, or let's say at the moment where we hear that very much everywhere in the press. The Internet of Things is now, and companies who will just make the move and tackle this business will be the winners, and a lot of companies who will be slow in taking that step might be left out down the road and completely disappear maybe in the years to come. So along with their services and their products. To give you an example, briefly, just this machine, these things in the world of the industrial. It's an air conditioning HVAC machine, and more. These machines are connected. And why are they connected? Because the manufacturer of those machines, they have certainly an interest to do that, because the opportunity for them is that they maybe don't make that much money in selling this machine to the company who want to install that on their roof, but they will make more money in servicing this machine, in having the service contract for that machine over the next 10 or 15 years. And having this machine connected allow them to be much more efficient in servicing this machine. Jim mentioned that trend of servitization before. We see that trend coming up, let's say very, very big, and that's one of the market where PDC ThingWorx operate. But being able to monitor that machine remotely allows that company who provide that machines to be more successful in servicing them, have the information of a breakdown before it actually happens, for instance. And also, talking about business transformation just before, that company have the ability with these connected machines to transform their business model and not anymore, let's say, sell the product or sell the service maintenance, but sell the utility of this product, let's say the ability to deliver cool air as a service, for instance, and charging the building owner per the amount of cool air that is produced by this machine, not just selling the machine by itself. So it's really transforming the business of this HVAC machine. They have the ability to get more revenue, save on costs, and also transform their business. So what we see in this as an enabler to unlock the value in the Internet of Things is, I mean, it's important to have the device connected, like with the Sigfox technology, for instance. But what we see and what unlocks the value is in the application. I take the example of the Fitbit that was mentioned before. It's nice to have a Fitbit, a fitness tracker, for instance, at your wrist, but without an application on your iPhone or on your PC, on your laptop, it's useless. That's exactly the same for the global Internet of Things. Without applications, all those billions of connected devices that we talk about, I mean, there won't be any business value. So what we estimate is that all those billions of devices that will be connected in the future, they require applications, innovative new applications to actually unlock the value of this business. And that's what ThingWorx focus on, basically. All these, this shows an example a little bit of the, let's say, by comparison, what has been the past, the M2M, where it was all about, let's say, moving data from a remote asset to a database, for instance, or the other way around, being able to send a command to a remote asset. The Internet of Things is rich applications that connect a lot of different elements from various devices across different verticals, different silos. That was the term mentioned before. But that connects that to multiple systems, to backend system, ERP systems, CRM, databases, web services, different types of backend systems that enrich the applications that are created and that deliver and unlock the value of this business. Of course, people are one component of that business. People who will interact with those rich applications. So that's what we call, let's say a connected applications for an IoT applications. That is the value of that application lies at the intersection of those people, systems, and things, devices. Our vision of this business is just a bit depicted in this slide. It's actually what's happening right now. Just like Jim said, it has been existed for years. The M2M space. There have been connected devices in the telematic space or for high-value assets, for instance, and there has been applications. But as you can see in the middle, in the application enablement space, there was, let's say, only general purpose tools to deliver those applications, to build those applications. And it was complicated and complex and time consuming. You required lots of developers and what you got at the end of developing those applications was actually not you needed at the time where it was ready. So the return on investment of those projects need to be very clearly defined for companies to embark on those types of projects. And that's one of the reasons why the first era of this M2M Internet of Things has failed a little bit to achieve the big numbers of connected devices we talk about. And what ThingWorx proposed is actually this application enablement platform that allows those companies with this tool just made for that, for the Internet of Things, to be able to create those applications, assemble those applications, not anymore develop. It's really about assembling those applications with data coming from various types of devices, from systems. Again, as I mentioned before, different backend systems, COP, ERM, database, whatever, files, all that. The ability to build those applications very efficiently with a reduction in time to market and cost that can go from 10 times, maybe 20 times, 50 times from those our customers. And it's the ability for those customers to innovate, to create new applications rapidly without thinking about a long and complex and expensive IT projects to deliver those applications. So that's what ThingWorx propose. And with our recent acquisition of Axida that will enrich the portfolio of PTC beside ThingWorx with the Axida product, we are actually building, let's say, the whole stack of technology that allows those customers to be even more rapid, quick, and cost-effective to develop those applications in the way they can connect to any type of devices and get hold of this data, build those applications, and have access to already pre-existing, pre-packaged application for remote services applications coming from Axida, for instance. But the tool ThingWorx is also there to develop the millions of new applications that are required to unlock this value. And with this platform, they have the ability, our customers have the ability to create those applications 10 times, up to 10 times or even more faster and more cost effectively. So just to quickly wrap up on this presentation, what we've seen that is IoT will transform every business. What we've seen that in the consumer space, you see more and more consumer devices that are connected, but in the industry as well, in all industries, whatever it is, automotive, oil and gas, retail, insurance. All those industries have the potential to be disrupted by the Internet of Things. So what we tell our customers is really to embark into that transformation. And to be successful in this space, they need to look beyond the traditional software suppliers and look for the specific tools to be flexible enough to address these billions of devices and create those millions of applications required to unlock this value. And the opportunity is massive. No need to repeat that in this audience, I guess, but it's we hired McKinsey to do some research for you, and only in the manufacturing space, which is the original market of PTC, it has the potential to generate value by either reducing cost or delivering additional value for 2.3 trillion by 2025. And in this space, we see that, the message that we'd like to convey to you today is that the time to act is now. I mean, there are all the tools and capabilities available today to disrupt this market. So we are providing such a tool to you, to the customers, and it's they now have the ability to go and disrupt this market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luc, for that. I'd now like to ask up Alexander Damisch from Wind River to provide us our next presentation. I will try and drive the technology whilst he makes his way over here.
Full screen?
Is that it? I don't know how to get that full screen.
I love technology. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm delighted to be here today. It's a pleasure. And I don't know, does everybody know Wind River? I see a few hands, maybe not everybody. Very quick introduction, because I don't have company slides here. I'm not talking about products. I'm not talking about technology here. I'm talking about something different. Wind River is known in the embedded market for being the market leader. We are about 30 plus years old. We are now part of the Intel family, so we're wholly owned but fully independent subsidiary. And a very nice metric we're pretty proud of is that we hear a lot of billions of devices out there. Well, Wind River actually has up to 2 billion devices out there running our technology today. Over many years, yes, but a lot of devices out there that are looking for connectivity. So while I have a session tomorrow talking about technology, talking about products, how we can solve the things, today I'd like to talk about something different. I'd like to give you a few thoughts about IoT, what does disruption mean, what is really impacting us, really to steer up a conversation later on. So when we talk about IoT, one question that comes to my mind is, where are we actually on the hype curve? And that's from the Gartner hype curve. You may have seen, where are we? I hear 35 trillion I heard today on value. In another context, 15 trillion, 2.3 trillion. On another opportunity, 50 billion connected devices. That sounds like an awesome opportunity. And we've been trying to catch it for the last, 10 years. So what does it mean? Well, recently in a blog, The Economist called bullshit on IoT. But we all know that IoT is out there. We have heard about real applications. I know at least one person in the audience who has a fully automated and intelligent house. I'm gonna share later with you after a glass of wine who it is. And really, it's there. So why is somebody like an economist calling bullshit on it? He actually took apart the numbers from the connectivity counter from the Cisco webpage, saying, well, the tablets and 10% of the devices are actually devices from Cisco counting the connections, so they don't really count. So it's kind of a negative thing getting in there. Well, I think the problem is that we know it's real, it's there, we know there's value, but there's kind of an issue getting the whole thing across to a broad mass here to make sure that it's really taking off. And in reality, I'm from a technology company here. We have a huge investment into IoT, so we truly believe in it. So what's the issue here? And that's exactly what I want to discuss a little bit. So when we talk about M2M, IoT, or another marketing term around that would be Internet of Everything, what does it actually mean? And as I don't want to define what IoT is because it doesn't really help, I borrowed from IDC a definition here. And it's pretty interesting because I think it helps along the line, the journey. And we talk here about 2025 to fully achieve the value here. How do we really get there? Well, M2M is the idea of having a device, capturing data, connecting it to an application, do something useful with it. Very easy to explain, and it's been there for many years. IoT actually wants to do more there. When we talk about IoT, we have a lot of things out there, and these things are intelligent, and they are talking to each other, and then there's value generated somewhere else. And then we have the Internet of Everything, which, frankly, I think is actually the broader vision of IoT anyway, and it's collecting together all the processes, people, and everything to make the whole thing really fly. So what does it really mean for our market? Well, if we think about M2M, just think about a simple example, attaching a gateway to a container, track it, find out where it's going, watching the temperature. That's a classic M2M opportunity, right? And I think that will remain an M2M opportunity for the next 10 years because it's not an intelligent thing. I'm adding intelligence to something. In the IoT, we're talking about incredible complex systems. We're talking about a Rolls-Royce jet engine. Rolls-Royce is not selling them anymore. Since the Malaysia airline incident, we know that they're calling back home all the time. And the reason is that Rolls-Royce is actually leasing their engine, and they charge based on how you use or abuse them, how you maintain it. It's a pay-per-use model. They're not selling engines anymore. That's pretty interesting. So this really complex system is different from a container. So what's happening there in future, today we are attaching devices to everything. We're talking about billions of gateways, putting it there, adding intelligence. In reality, what we're creating there, whenever we talk about how many billions of devices we deployed, we're actually creating a cost there. We're creating a maintenance problem there. We're adding something on the ERP sheet, to keep in stock. So these things, these gateways, they will go away. They're going to be consolidated and be part of intelligent systems. So that's a path how M2M will, parts of it actually merge into IoT and be something different. And then we have the whole idea of, process everything getting in. And that's a completely different beast here where, business intelligence is not divided between devices down there, intelligence up there. The border is actually becoming fuzzy. It's not clear where the intelligence is. And if you talk to somebody in the industrial automation space and you tell him intelligence is in his cloud and a electrical drive is not intelligent, well, he will really disagree with you because such a drive is really intelligent. So the whole thing, where is intelligence, where does it start, where does it stop, is completely changing and makes the whole thing way more complex. So what does it actually mean to us? There's a lot of technology involved. We have people here who have technology. We can build an end-to-end solution. We have people in the audience who have products there. A lot of people in the panel who actually did it already. So what does it actually mean to the customer? Well, let's get one step back and think about the value matrix behind it. Number one issue why people think about IoT is actually cost. How can I reduce cost? And if we think about cost, we usually think about, the cost of a device, bill of material. In reality, if we think about devices in the industrial space that live for 20, 25 years, the majority of the cost is generated during operation. So there's a huge saving chance in the operational cost. There is a big opportunity for consolidation. So when I'm talking about gateways disappearing as a discrete device, becoming a soft appliance on intelligent devices, that's exactly what's happening because of cost. And then if you look up the Industrial Internet Consortium, they're talking about the power of 1%. What if I could save 1% of full cost from an airline? That's about 20% of the operational expenditure from Lufthansa. That's a lot of money if I could save just 1% there. So that's a huge driver there, big value. And then there's the other thing, new revenue. Wouldn't everybody would love to do new revenue, not just trying to keep up with prices and develop new technology? No, really get new revenue. And that new revenue in our space, when we talk about the huge industry, has to come from already deployed devices. If you think about the whole energy market, in North America, the grid, about 70% of the installed base is older than 30 years. Now, how do you get new revenue out of there? Do you go there and just, replace everything? It's not happening. If you do that, probably, no electricity in North America for the next 10 years. So you have to add to it. You have to, do something differently. And that's exactly where people are moving away, and we've heard that a lot, from a device to service. So the whole value chain is disrupted. A lot of us are used to, being from Wind River, we're charging runtimes, we're used to developer seats. It's moving away from selling a device for cost to selling a service. We hear that a lot, we're talking about it, we have it in our PowerPoints, but how are we actually doing that in our, Salesforce, marketing, the whole business case? How do we build that up? That's the key element there. This really requires a new go-to-market, a new business model, and it's going to disrupt the supply chain, absolutely. And then last but not least, innovation. Everybody's after innovation. Anybody in here still having a BlackBerry or Nokia phone? One hand over there. Another one. Well, used to be really great phones and they're kind of catching up again. But one day they woke up and found out that their market had been taken by somebody who didn't even do copy and paste on a web browser. Really limited device, but completely took away the market. Nokia being bought by Microsoft, BlackBerry on life support. So that's happening if innovation is falling behind. And the innovation is really about expanding market share to drive up the average sales price. And the interesting thing, if you look about all these three here, if people are doing decisions, officially they rationalize them on number 1 and 2, on cost reduction and new revenue, because you can do a clear return on investment calculation around it, but the real decision will be driven out of the fear of not being innovative enough anymore. And that's a big pain in the market. So what does it mean? I looked at a book which is really interesting, The Innovator's Dilemma. I highly recommend reading it. It's actually a pretty old book already. It's talking about how big companies, they do everything actually the right way. They have great product marketing, great sales. How do they fail in the market? Why do they fail? Why do they not come up with a great new innovation? What happens? And the interesting claim they brought up is that market disruption has been found actually not to be, in most cases, be a technology thing. It's actually a question of changing application. Just to bring up an example, the 4T model. Everybody knows the 4T model totally disrupted the market. The car had been invented before that, long before. People are still riding their horse carts and everything. It didn't disrupt the market. And then the 4T model, famous saying from Mr. Ford, you can order it in any color if it's black. So very limited, but he completely changed the rules. So what is actually the driver behind that? And there is an interesting article out there. I would look it up. It's talking about dematurity. And dematurity talks about how this whole process works along the lines. And they're talking about new habits in the customer, new means of distribution, new competition, new regulation, new production technologies. And just to use an example outside of our common space here, most of you, if you consume music today, you probably use a device like that. Music is in there, you don't care how it gets in. There are different ways. You can use Google Play or Apple iTunes, whatever. The interesting thing is, Sony, everybody knows them, they were completely dominating that market. They owned the rights for the majority of the music, the biggest producer of CDs, and they completely owned that. Now what's happening is their production is going down, they're really suffering, they're struggling in that area. But when Apple came out with their new iPhone, do you know where Apple actually got the music from? It was streamed from Sony Music servers, because they had all the technology, they had all the licenses, they had all the right management, everything. So how the hell could that happen, They had everything, and they completely failed to achieve what Apple did. Well, they completely missed the boat on being a competition with themselves. They were so into protecting their own revenue stream on pressing CDs that they forgot if they are not competing with themselves, somebody else will come and use their technology, have a completely new business model, and with that business model, totally disrupt the market and change the game. We all know Sony's out of the business now. Apple is a big player and now, expanded to video, Netflix, everything. And if you think about the thought about dematurity, new means of distribution, you don't buy a DVD, you stream it, new production technology, it's a digital thing, it's not a physical thing, new competition, all these elements fall in there. Now, we are talking about IoT, right? We're talking about billions of connections, gateways, technology. Yes, absolutely, we need to solve these problems. And not everything is solved. Security is still a big thing, connectivity standards, everything has to mature there. But in reality, while we're doing our homework on technology, we need to understand how to make the whole thing big by rethinking our way, how we do business with our customer. Because that's the only way how we make it easy for them to drive the adoption of IoT forward. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. On to our next presentation now, which is Mr. Tim Taberner from Eurotech. Let me just find it. Here we go. Who is the Group M2M Evangelist. Soon to be the Group IoT Evangelist, I believe.
It's all in the hands.
Full screen mode. Got it. There we go. And then, yeah, those two.
Okay. Right, good afternoon. Getting to the end of a long day. I hope we're going to have some lively panel discussion in the next few minutes when I've finally finished boring you to death. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of M2M and maybe reflect some of the stuff that Jim's already been saying. As you can tell from looking at me, I'm not young. And actually, I've worked in M2M pretty much all of my life since I left university, which is much longer ago than I care to remember. And over all that time, it's been called lots of different things. You know, and up there I've said it's existed in energy and utilities for a long time, but it's existed in factory automation, it's existed in telematics on vehicles. So there's a lot of knowledge out there. As Jim said, in the past, it's kind of been restricted to high-value assets. And certainly that is changing with some of the examples that Jim showed earlier, not so much because of the change in technology, but because of the change in the cost points of that. Hardware becomes cheaper, connectivity becomes cheaper. As hardware becomes cheaper, it becomes possible to do cleverer things at application level. But the point about this slide is really that as we talk about the Internet of Things, as we talk about deploying all of these devices, as we talk about moving forwards, we all have to bear in mind that there's a lot of legacy equipment out there that's got to be part of what we're doing. You know, it's not all about greenfield applications. So, looking at these sorts of legacy devices, you know, what's the problem with them? Why have they grown up how they have? Well, I think we all know, and we all talk about silos of automation. Why do they grow up? Well, from my experience, you know, what happens is somebody defines a point-in-time problem. They go fix that problem by putting in place some sort of M2M system. And 18 months later, they want to do something slightly different. They want to bring a new piece of information in. They want to move the information to a different place. And the M2M system that they've put in place can't adapt to do that. And so they have a choice. Do they rip that out and put something new in that can handle both types of application? Or do they put a parallel system in at the side? And historically, what happens is people put parallel systems side by side so that they can actually control a process more completely. These examples are basically taken from an oil and gas pipeline where we'll have a SCADA system that's moving the valves up and down to pump oil to the right place, but we'll also have a completely separate emergency shutdown system in case things go wrong. We'll have a completely separate condition monitoring system sitting alongside that, looking at maybe cathodic protection on the pipeline and so on. And when you look at the systems, they have a lot of resources in common locations measuring common things. You know, a temperature on an oil pipeline might have relevance to all of the systems up there, but actually there'll be 4 separate boxes all taking that information. And when you look at the communications architectures, the same things happen. There'll be parallel communications infrastructures in for all of those systems. And actually, if you go and look at one of the boxes in the field, almost certainly that will have more than one communication line into it. You know, one of those SCADA units will have a line that goes back up to the SCADA system, but if you ask the engineers how to do maintenance on it, there'll be another dial-up line sitting at the side of it. So they've actually got multiple communications paths, even to individual units down at the edge. And all of that stuff costs us money. It costs us money in deploying hardware, deploying communications that we don't need to. But also it gives us an inability to adapt and modify systems. And again, that ends up in a lot of money being spent on IT projects to do that. So I think we'd all agree that, you know, where we want to move to with the Internet of Things is having all of our systems cooperating and collaborating, moving data around for the sorts of examples, again, that Jim was highlighting earlier. But I think it goes wider than that. It's not just about where are we going to move the data and how are we going to make systems collaborate at data level. It's actually how are we going to make them collaborate at infrastructure level. Again, one of the ways that we reduce the cost of implementing systems is by allowing them to share a common infrastructure. So the cost of putting in the first system may be around the same level as traditionally it's always been, but making incremental changes to that system, bringing on new types of data, bringing on new types of remote device, actually gets to be a much lower cost because it can share the existing infrastructure investment. So I go around and I talk to people about M2M and have done for a long time, and I'm amazed how often one of the first reactions I get is for someone to tell me that their industry is different. You go and talk to an oil and gas engineer and they'll tell you something. You go and talk to somebody in water and they'll say, yeah, water's different. You go and talk to someone in security, yeah, security is different. And then we'll have a discussion and we'll get past the acronyms that they use, and we'll find out that actually a whole lot of those industries are very similar. They may have a slightly different value proposition on real-time data against archive data or on how fast data needs to come back, but fundamentally the things that they want to do are pretty much the same. And you can characterise it like this, that we have vertical market knowledge at the edge, and that can take the form of some specific hardware interfaces. You know, if we're looking at vehicle telematics, we might want to have some ODB2 stuff that's going down on CAN to the engine management system. If we're looking at telemetry systems, we might need to know how to talk Modbus or DMP3 or some of those old cranky protocols that they've got out there. It will form itself in terms of how do we want to control and manage an asset. So if we're putting a system that's going onto a bus to do some stuff, there'll be stuff we want to do locally on the bus, or on the train, or in the room, in the venue. And there'll be stuff that we want to hand data off of. And so down at the edge, we can see the need for some sort of data aggregation point, some sort of intelligence that we can control and configure, but then into which we can load our vertical market knowledge. The same kind of happens at the top. You know, you can see that according to the vertical market, there'll be different ways that they want to analyse the data, slice and dice the data, present that to different stakeholders. But again, what we need to do is we need to provide interfaces that allow that to happen in the most open and extensible way that we can. But then there's this whole bit in the middle that I've said is M2M knowledge. And one of the things Jim said right at the start was when people used to put SCADA and the original telematics systems in, it went on to high-value assets because it was difficult to do. And the thing I'd say is that actually that's still difficult to do. Okay? To get one type of device to talk to one application on a desk is easy. You can do it any number of ways. You can invent your own way of doing it. Scaling that out to a pilot scheme of 100 devices is easy. You can do that any number of ways. Putting something in place that is going to deal with future applications that you don't know about yet, that's going to deal with future devices that you don't know about yet, that has to operate seamlessly across a whole range of different communications infrastructures, that has to operate seamlessly across a whole range of different geographies, that gives you device management, that gives you scalability, that gives you security. That's hard to do. So I think one of the big things in terms of looking at IoT and how do we accelerate adoption of it, and from Eurotech's standpoint, is saying you need to put platforms in place that handle that part of the problem, the M2M difficult issues, figuring out how you treat exception events on communications lines and all of that good stuff. And within that, then provide application containers into which users can put their vertical market knowledge so that it can actually make these vanilla systems do stuff at the edge in an intelligent way, aggregating data, concentrating data, pre-filtering data before it goes up to the cloud. But for them not to have to worry about actually what's going on underneath the hood. And the way I explain it is to take a social media paradigm. So, you know, historically with M2M, if you want to get a device talking to an application, one way or the other, one of those units needs to know a lot about the other one. If you want to get information out of a device, you have to know what communication line is it on, what protocol is it talking, maybe even what register at what address do I have to go to get the information. That doesn't work for the Internet of Things. In the Internet of Things, we want to encourage people to come on and write new novel applications that are going to facilitate new service models and new revenue models. We can only do that if all of that detail is abstracted. So the paradigm I use for that is like Twitter, okay? If I'm on Twitter, I can say I'm interested in hashtag Eurotech, and without me having to know how many devices are publishing information on that, how many people are tweeting, without having to know where they are, what sort of device it is, how it's connected, without having to know any of that rubbish, anything that gets published on hashtag Eurotech comes to me, and I can then deal with it, process it, do whatever I want with it. And we have to make our M2M systems work like that. We have to make them be data-centric rather than being device-centric. So we've got a booth at the stand. If you want to get detail on all of this, then I'm doing a couple of speeches over the next couple of days, but also on the booth we can talk in great detail. I don't want to take a lot of time now because I really want to get the group discussion going. You know, what's important about this? How are we going to make the Internet of Things happen? Well, the first thing is we need to start thinking holistically, not about point-in-time problems. You know, still as we go out and we talk about platforms and we talk about application and stuff, and I'm sure the rest of the panel would agree with me, too often what happens is we end up in a discussion about a point-in-time problem for a business. And it's quite understandable. You know, they say, this is great, we want to trial it. What's the biggest problem that we can address at this point in time? And all of a sudden, that IoT project becomes a project to figure out where are all the empty car parking spaces in Marseille. And a budget's appointed and a project manager's appointed. And now, surprise, surprise, we've got a project manager with a budget to deliver a system that tells him where all the empty car park spaces in Marseille are. And there's 5 companies here that's their business. And all of a sudden, from a risk profile, he says, well, I'm going to go to this company that has got a track record of doing that stuff and putting it in place. And all of a sudden, the IoT opportunity is lost. We're back to another point-in-time solution. So we've got to start thinking holistically about this stuff. And that extends right down to us as an ecosystem of suppliers. You know, from an end user perspective, there isn't a single company in the world that an end user can go to and say, I want to buy 3 sacks of IoT, please. Because no one has that complete story. The whole industry has to grow up and start acting as a true ecosystem of partners, where we understand that actually there may be substantial areas of overlap between our business propositions and our service offerings, but on the edges of those, there's stuff that actually adds real value to an end user. And we need to start having the grown-up discussion about, okay, so what are we going to do about the area of overlap now? You know, we can't keep saying, my platform's better than your platform. It doesn't work. We need to think about data-centric, not device-centric. We need to completely decouple the producers of data from the consumers of data. You know, again, a temperature sensor on the wall. You can define what it needs to do really easily. If I'm a temperature sensor on the wall, I need to publish the temperature once every 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever the interval would be, unless it goes out of bounds, in which case I need to publish that immediately, or it changes at a rate faster than some profile, in which case I need to publish it immediately. I don't need to know anything about what applications are going to consume that data. My world's fixed. Now, consuming that data, I might be an HVAC system that says I'm going to use this as a set point to control the temperature in a room. But I might be an intruder detection system that says if I see a rate of change of temperature and it's the middle of the night, then that probably means a window's been smashed and I want to do something about it. Or I might be a fire detection system that says if I see the temperature's gone out of bounds or I see a rate of change of temperature increasing really rapidly, I might want to do something about that. And we have to start thinking about the data in terms of the topics of data that we're publishing on and what that data can be used for, not having to know anything about the details of the underlying devices. We need to think about device management. If we're going to deploy systems where ultimately we don't know what the boxes are going to be used for and the use of those boxes is going to change over time, then we need a way to be able to put new applications down and update applications and know the revision of all the applications that are down on our population of devices from the centre. And that needs to happen over the same infrastructure that we're going to use for the actual data recovery. I think the other thing that we need to do and we need to be careful of, as an industry, I hear a lot of noise on the forums about standards, about interoperability. Actually, a lot of these problems have already been solved in other industries, and we need to really think about where can we leverage existing solutions and bring them into what we do, rather than just be inventing standards for the sake of this is IoT, so we need another standard. That's really all I've got to say for now. Let's get a debate going. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. It's been requested we have a slight interlude so they can reposition the camera. So apparently it's going to take a few minutes, then we can have the panel session. Okay, I think we're off. Right. Thank you, everybody. Fine. So, just to kick this panel off, I'm going to come up with a few questions and ask these to people. I do want participation from the audience, so I'll come back to you guys in a minute and ask for some contributions. Just to kick all this off, though, we've talked a lot about the theory and about the millions and billions of devices and about the trillions of dollars and the billions of dollars and you name it. When's the concept going to be real? When am I going to feel like I'm living in an IoT world as opposed to today's world? And start off, maybe Mallorie, start off, provide a first response to that.
Well, for me, I will be a little bit maybe challenging or annoying, but I think that the reality is really today. We talked about the Securitas case. So this is a reality that we are in fact currently deploying millions of devices in the field. So for me, once again, and I think that I mentioned that during my presentation, is that everything is ready for that. We had very interesting speech from all around the table. And for me, everything is ready. So from the chipset manufacturer to the terminals device, and I fully sharing what you have all said. It means that there is a bit pipe to transfer data. But of course, data without any application or platform itself for nothing. And I consider that we have all these building blocks ready today. So it will be maybe a matter of imagination, and we have everything to create the business case. So for me, it's real. It's now, I don't know what I can add.
It's real and it's happening.
Yes, it's of course it's happening, and also you just showed me a news on your phone. Yep. So it's just that all the big names of the industries, smartphones and big companies, they are just investing massively in this market. And once again, we've got real cases to share today. So it's not more a dream. Well, this is what I think.
Okay. Just to fill everyone else in, the news is that Huawei have just bought another UNB type provider, quite have a product quite similar to what Sigfox says. So it's about to get very real very quickly, I think. But in terms of our daily lives, Alexander, when are we going to feel like we're living an IoT future, IoT current?
Well, if you ask my wife, it's impacting my daily life because it's part of my job to follow that. But if we look at what's happening, we all have a use case where we can explain how IoT is happening today. I can talk tomorrow. We have a presentation on IoT explaining how we made HVAC systems more intelligent. So everybody has got a real use case. However, how does it really start to feel, in everyday life that things got really smarter? And I think it's not really happening at the rate that we really think or thought 5 years ago. And I'd like to, connect to what Tim said on, IoT is an ecosystem. It's not that one can deliver a DVD saying, well, that's IoT 1.0. It's on the DVD, it's there, you can use it, and it solves all your problems. So it's really something where the big players have to get their act together to work together on standards, on interoperability, and that's happening. We see that, the Industrial Internet Consortium, we see the Open Interconnect Consortium, we see that big players are getting together to define what they think needs to be done to be interoperable and to solve the big end-to-end problem. So with that, I think the technology is there. Is it really like, dream, it's really true, it's done already? No, I don't think so. There's a lot of work to do. We need all together, get our act together and work on common standards. Also, again, agreed with Tim, a lot of these problems being solved in other industries, telco industry, and industrial automation, all of them solve parts of the problem. Let's reuse these technologies, and then I think it can happen very near term.
Thank you. Luke and Tim, any thoughts on?
Yeah. I think the thing I'd like to say is there's a few problems, and I promised myself I wasn't going to do anything that was too Eurotech specific for this session, but I think there's something that kind of fits the question. So when we talk about Internet of Things, the architecture that Eurotech puts out for all of this middleware stuff that I was talking about and the M2M integration platform actually is something that we've used as an internal toolkit for 15 years. If you talk about taking data from intelligent devices and distributing that to multiple applications, we started doing that 15 years ago with Chevron and Philips Pipeline when we were doing protocol translation work on their SCADA systems so that they could replace their communications infrastructure, and they came to us and said, hey, it would be really neat if we could get a subset of this data into our SAP system because that would really streamline our billing process, and if we could get another subset of that data into our maintenance system because that would really help us do preventative maintenance rather than waiting for stuff to go wrong. And as a result of that, we developed a whole load of stuff that now is in the architecture that we use. We co-developed a protocol called MQTT with IBM. Over the years, the individual components have changed, but fundamentally the architecture is exactly the same. So on one level, we would say the Internet of Things has existed for more than 15 years. What's changing is that people are coming to realize that if they want to generate new service revenues, if they want to move into new business areas, then they need to find a way to do that that's agile, flexible, and that allows them to concentrate on what's their real vertical market proposition rather than what's the detail of how do I construct this stuff. I think some of the things that are difficult about it, I spoke about partner ecosystems and us learning to be grown up about areas of overlap because the sum of the whole is greater than the individual parts. I think actually end users also have a problem in that quite often when they're setting budgets for all of this stuff, a lot of the potential benefits of putting an IoT infrastructure in place accrue to departments or other organisations that aren't actually bearing the cost of it. And those sorts of business models I don't think have quite got into the place yet where that can be recognised or fed in. I think one of the other things is that from an accountant's point of view, if you put an IoT system in that's basically reducing their cost by doing some smart stuff, whether that's giving them the ability to do preventative maintenance or the ability to do their service schedules more effectively, that's a kind of easy win. An accountant can sit there, he can say the system's going to cost me X, it's replacing this stuff that costs me Y, and either that makes sense or it doesn't. I think where it gets harder is where you start talking about new service revenues and new business streams, where actually we're kind of saying as a leap of faith, put this in place because then all of a sudden people are going to come along with some clever ideas about how to combine data to give you new values. And getting people to do that leap of faith, again, is a paradigm shift for end users that, you know, not all of them are there and ready to make those jumps yet.
Thank you. Look.
Yeah, just to get a bit more concrete, just like Mallorie said, we have, looking at Tim's wrist, he has a Fitbit there. It's a connected device, and millions of people are already wearing that. So we're living in an internet connected world, and we already carry devices that are connected. Our cars are more and more connected. Some German brands have their car connected. Our insurance policies are linked to connected devices because we have a tiny device fitted in our car that just track how we drive, and we pay based on how we drive and where we drive, etc. So it's been there, and it's just growing faster and faster and getting more the let's say the buzz of the general public. But it's we live in this IoT space for quite some time, and we just starting to realize, or general public is starting to realize that. But just to make some other examples based on our customers, we have some customers in the field of smart agriculture, for instance, who are building smart crop applications, and they measure with sensors out there in the field when it's best to water the crops, and they are, let's say, that affects our daily lives. That affects the quality of the food we eat every day, and that's a B2B applications that affect each and everyone in this room.
Okay, so there seems to be, I mean, to summarize, there seems to be a developing and ever-expanding range of products and services which can be deployed in a connected sense, or in a connected way. One thing that's, to coin a phrase, one thing that seems to be coming out of this, or you're kind of suggesting, or has been suggested across the panel, is the concept of sort of subnets of things, the little groups that might develop in more accelerated ways. So your agricultural solutions, your farms in Monsanto or something like that, might have something that's highly integrated because all of the data and all of the applications are owned and controlled by, you know, one man or one board or a group of shareholders who are all motivated in the same way, and there are no privacy constraints. Same thing within some of the industrial solutions. So you actually get these developing subnets of things into working rather than a more seamless Internet of Things. Is that, you're nodding, Tim?
Yeah, well, I think very much, and it comes back to what I was saying about, you know, fundamentally, what drives all of this is somebody having a business case that either it's going to generate them revenue or it's going to save them money. And with the financial models that traditionally exist, it's far easier to do that if there's one stakeholder and he can apply the technology across a range of things that are in his control and in his business. Because, as you say, you know, there's a business case he makes, there's no privacy concerns, yada, yada, yada. It gets more difficult, as I was saying earlier, when actually the benefit as yet unquantified is going to accrue to partners as yet unknown who are going to pay some sort of revenue on a service as yet undefined. You know, that kind of takes a leap of faith somewhere.
Yes, the business case is really important, and I think that today we've got, alongside all the ecosystem, because you were talking about the ecosystem, and it's very important that, the ecosystem is quite mature at every stage of this ecosystem. And as an example, for example, business case. So when you have a business case, but you don't have even the technology or the application or the platform, it cannot happen. I will just take an example of in France. I don't know if it's a European law, by the way. By January next year, we will have to put smoke detectors in each individual house or flats. And there is one insurance company who's just thought about it. Well, first, it's coming from a report which saying that in 25% of cases, when there is a fire, in fact, the alarm detector, the smoke detector is not working. At 25% of cases, it's quite a lot. So this insurance company is just thinking that, okay, so even it will give freely to his policy holder the smoke detectors, but I still is thinking that, okay, I will in fact do loyalty. So it's for the loyalty of my customer, and I bring them an additional security to say, okay, I will give you a connected smoke detector, because today you can find smoke detectors in the supermarket for some, okay, let's say 10, 15, between 15 and 20 euros. So it's quite challenging with a connected device to have a smoke detectors with this kind of price. And the challenge is here is to be able to provide a smoke detector which no wire, I mean that in terms of battery, of electricity, but which will last for at least 10 years, that if you put on your roof, you're okay with that. And then which will provide information on the health of your smoke detector. You were talking about predictive maintenance, and this is absolutely it. You need to be informed, so you've got keep alive message every day, just to say, hello, I'm here, I'm running well. Or what is the state of my battery? Today, with the existing cellular network, it's quite difficult to have a standalone product for 10 years, and also a cost-effective product, because of course, in fact, I'm mentioning MAF. MAF Assurance cannot place freely a smoke detector, which will cost 100 euros to its policyholders. So this is why I think that we are mature for that through a low power wide area network connectivity. But with all what you were saying, it means that even if we are providing the information, it's very important to be able to deal with it. So this is application, this is platform, and this is even into the CRM of the customers.
I think I think where stuff's going in as a result of legislation, it can kind of be a bit of a dual-edged sword, because the trouble with it, there's in the UK, there's a mandate that every home will have a smart meter by, I forget, the next year or the next 18 months. And the trouble is, without that coming from the utility companies, they see that as a cost to their business. So what they're doing, by and large, is actually putting in the lowest cost, lowest functionality that they can do to meet the letter of the law, and actually, by doing that, not having the vision and therefore missing the opportunity to actually put something in that could be more capable, that could be inherently a home gateway to connect a whole load of different services, because it's got to be there anyway, or that might have provision to start talking dynamically to other appliances that are in the home to actually do something clever with the energy stuff. So I'm a bit, doing stuff by legislation is kind of great because it pushes the market forward. But if it's done without a secure business case for the people that have to do it, the problem with it is it's viewed as a cost and therefore something that they just do at the lowest possible denominator.
I really like that, the use case you just brought up, because I think it's a brilliant example of what happens if you don't think through the whole system. So if you think about the utility and the smart meter, so who owns the smart meter? Who owns the data being collected by the smart meter? Is it the utility? Or is it actually the owner of the private house? Then the question is, who is managing the connectivity? Everybody here has got an ADSL modem at home already. Do you want to have another box in there that does a different connection? Why it's not using the same connection? So a lot of questions in between there. And at the end, it's for the consumer, it's completely unclear what the value is. They're not really saving on the electricity bill. And utility, they don't see really a use case for them as well to leverage it. And that's exactly where I think people need to think through the whole business case and understand the simple question I ask all the time: who is paying for it? And another example would be, I don't know if you remember, in the mobile healthcare Continue Alliance, I think was a great initiative for North America. Everybody gets a device at home, monitor people, how they're doing and everything. A very simple question they did not ask at the beginning: who is actually going to pay for it? So the patients didn't pay for it, the insurance company didn't think they would pay for it, and the producer of the medical treatment devices, they said, well, I want to have my own means of doing that. I don't want to have a generic gateway at home. And that's exactly where we need to be more creative. And as you said, it's usually not a single person also within a company. If they want to do IoT, you talk to the VP R&D, he has some technology issues. You talk to the COO, he wants to reduce cost. You talk to the VP support, he actually wants to provide a new service. So who gets the revenue? So the whole thing, we need to get one step back, think more holistically, and really solve a business problem before we get hung up on how many billion devices or how great I'm able to connect to devices. Something's been solved years ago. This is really, I think, the main thing to make it happen.
And Continue is a really interesting example, because actually you look at the history of it, and it's a great paradigm for what goes wrong with these things. So we were involved with the Continua. At the point where Continua came out, we were the only manufacturer of a Continua gateway. So the devices would talk to the gateway, and then it would go up to the cloud. And what happened with Continua is what happens with a lot of, for want of a better description, standards bodies. And that is a relatively small cluster of companies get together and start, for the best reasons, defining a standard that's going to transform an industry or progress an industry. And then over a period of time, as that standards body gains more traction, more vendors and more users get involved, and they start then pursuing their own agendas. And so what happens is the whole standards body disappears into its own cloud for, forgive the use of cloud, but disappears into its own huddle for 3, 4, 5 years, during which time you get a breakaway group who go and do something different because they can't be bothered to wait, or some other technology comes along that actually everyone says, well, okay, let's forget that, let's move on to this new technology because it's going to be better, and then the whole cycle reinvents itself. And so, again, what I was saying earlier about we as an ecosystem of suppliers need to stop that habit of behaviour. We need to understand that, yes, there are going to be areas of overlap between what we do. And we have to be grown up about those things. We have to decide, maybe even project by project, okay, in this area, in this project, whose area of overlap is it that's going to get provided? The industry is just full of car crashes where something that would have been a good initiative has fallen over because people get involved and decide they're going to fight their proprietary corner within it. And we have to stop.
Thank you. Any questions for anyone up there, please, in the front row?
Yes, hi. I'm from company On Your Map. My question is going back to the business models that you were talking about. Who's going to pay for that? And it's always a big question. And I was just wondering whether, just want your response to that. Yes, sir. Yep. Oops. Okay. Yeah. So the question was, isn't the IoT technology too expensive, so that this is the reason why it doesn't ramp up? And I think we have a very good example with Securitas Direct that Ms. Claudel gave, because I don't think it could be a possible application or deployment if it wasn't with very cheap hardware and cheap connection costs. Today, telecom operators, connection is pretty expensive, battery consumption is expensive, and it's more related to maybe the price of the alternative technologies, and being disruptive maybe is the only way of making it ramp up.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I'm not working for Sigfox.
Yeah. Just on this level, we see the trend of the different components of the applications going down, whether it's hardware, whether it's software, whether it's applications. So let's say, I started working in the field of communications module, not Sigfox, but on the GSM network, and it used to cost, a module used to cost like 40 euros. Now we are closer to 10 euros, and it's maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe a bit more, but the price is going down the drain quite a lot, significantly. Same for the cost of telecommunication, and there's even more technologies coming up with with Sigfox, for instance, exactly. And what we try to do with ThingWorx is exactly that one, make that this application building and running these applications more cost effective, development time, shorten development time and shorten the cost to develop those applications, and have the ability for those companies to evolve those systems, not be stuck with frozen applications that they started to think about maybe 2 years ago, and that they only get to market now and that they need to adapt. So everyone is working in that direction to reduce the cost of those technology, and that's what will enable those billions of devices to be real. And I think we're really getting there in terms of these cost reductions at each and every element of the IoT value chain.
So I'd like to add to that. So first, I think cost is not the main issue of IoT taking off. And the reason is I look at two different buckets here. First, I look at the brownfield opportunity. Brownfield means that I have a business case that justifies to add a device, to add intelligence, and to build up my new application. And as with all technologies, you have this kind of curve where you have the early adopters that are willing to pay any price to be the leader in the market, to be very innovative, like Rolls-Royce with their jet engines. They just march ahead and do it. But as a natural element, in future, the price is not the issue because things get consolidated in devices. Just a simple example. In the past, I was a big fan of a Palm Pilot. I had my cell phone and I probably had a computer for browsing the web. At a certain time, it was pretty obvious that you want to have web browsing while you were not in the office on your laptop as well, so you got a modem. So you had all these different things here. Well, we all know what happened. We have tablets where you can do everything. We have phone with instant on emails in there and everything. So eventually, through the business case of the early adopters, the technology advanced in a way really driven by the market, not the market driven by the technology. That now you have these, probably a chip from Broadcom in there, having everything on it that's required from Bluetooth LE to NFC to 3G LTE, whatever, everything on one thing. Cost is not the issue anymore. So I strongly believe that the business case is driving the market, and it's not the cost that's holding the whole thing back.
I think I'd agree with that. By history, Eurotech is an embedded computer manufacturer. And Moore's law states that computing power gets cheaper, communications get cheaper. So, for sure there are some business cases that won't make sense today, but that will probably make sense in a year or in 2 years' time. So it's not a reason not to start. But I think the other trend that's emerging that's disruptive is the notion of having all of this as a service, right down to the device as a service. So, if you look at mobile phones and the choices people make about what phone they're going to get, if the only business model was you had to go out and you had to buy the phone and then you had to get your connectivity contract, then we wouldn't see so many Galaxy S3s and all the rest of it around. People would have much cheaper phones because they wouldn't want to make that initial investment as a lump sum. And the same thing's happening within the IoT space, the notion of having a device as a service paid for monthly, so that actually it's a capex cost, an opex cost rather than a capex cost, and the opex cost can be set against some new revenue stream or some service saving, actually makes a big difference to the business cases that you can build around this. So I agree. The cost, to say the cost isn't important isn't true. Because the cost underpins the business case. The business cases are constantly evolving, but we know what happens with the costs of the technology that's needed to build this stuff, and we know that decreases exponentially over time. So I think it's a case of where will the early adopters be is going to be identifying the business cases where it makes sense and continually tracking that as the cost of the actual infrastructure and hardware moves down.
Well, on my side, I will say that I do agree that cost is not the only element, and this is all different things. However, what we can see in cost is, it's important. If we want to connect millions of units, so I'm really talking about millions of units and high volume, yes, of course, cost is important. It's not the only one thing, but because we are talking about return on investment, and when we are talking about business case, if the return on investment is obvious and is quick, of course it will ease, in fact, the investment. So there is, for me, to consider the OPEX, well, the CAPEX first and the OPEX. And of course, after it's a simple calculation. And when we were talking about Securitas, yes, the additional cost to put a backup connectivity is almost zero, because in fact the chipsets are already there. They can in fact embed this new communication protocol from Sigfox, and that's it. And also in the other business cases, we were talking about metering, so we had also some examples in the water metering where in fact cost is important because it's a return on investment calculation. But of course, once again, if we are missing the very important building blocks of application platforms to put smart, to treat the information in a smart way, cost is no more important. So I do agree, but for me, it's a critical note.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is educating users to look at the true lifetime cost of ownership. You know, and I think a whole number of people along this table would talk about platforms and why you'd want a platform-based approach. You know, again, looking back historically at M2M, and still a lot of M2M systems that get put out there today, the notion of how they're going to share data is they're going to stick a SQL database at the back end and then let people come and access that. Well, you know, technically that's not a great solution because SQL databases don't keep up with real-time data very well. So just at the time that you need the system, you know, when stuff's going wrong and you've got alarm floods, the SQL database starts bottoming out on what it can do. But more importantly, with that sort of technology, the problem is that at day one, you've got to sit down and you've got to design the database. So you've got to decide what are the things that you're going to want to put into it, how are you going to relate those together. You deploy that system, and then, you know, 12 months down the road when the CEO decides he's going to open up a pizza delivery business because it makes some sense, then there's a whole IT project that goes on about how do you reconfigure that database to take the new data type. So the total cost of ownership is in a whole load of hidden things, like if you can put a system in place where the infrastructure can be shared with systems as yet unknown, where the database architecture is going to auto-adapt and auto-serve up data as yet unknown, actually there's a real benefit in lifetime cost that's really difficult to put a dollar value against, but nevertheless, you know, as you talk to companies that are considering this space and are kind of looking at new models, they kind of get the fact that, yes, there is a real cost to them. It's just kind of hard to put a figure against.
So back to your comment on education, I think that's a really key element. I don't want to beat the whole thing to death here, but I had a conversation with a customer, you know, talking about it's too expensive, the connectivity, it's too expensive adding a device there. And then we had a discussion on, okay, what could you do with the data? You know, what's the value in there? And actually, at the end, it wasn't a problem. The cost wasn't an issue. So it's really, you know, educating the people. You know, IoT is a great buzzword. Everybody has to do IoT. So what do you actually want to do? Where's the value for you? And if you do that, I think you do have a pretty good case where you can find a return on investment for, you know, yes, there is cost, but it's really driven by the business case, not the cost driving the other direction.
Thank you. Rob?
Yes. Rob van Kranenburg, Council, and well, thanks for a very open and informative panel. And basically got two sort of brief questions. One for you, Tim. Really enjoyed your presentation, and I think from what you showed, we can also see that we come from a very bad situation, which built with a lot of engineers. And so one of the things is maybe they didn't take architectural responsibility for what they were actually sort of putting into place, which leaves us now with this situation where we have to sort of remedy situation that's ultimately coming from like hundreds and hundreds of closed solutions. So yes, totally agree. We should sort of get this debate going where people should have grown-up discussions about what their platforms actually sort of do and where sort of they could share a collaborative ecosystem. So the question to you would be sort of, where would you think that such a debate could be actually sort of course it's here, but sort of where do you think it should be or could be formed? Because it's quite a serious discussion. Do you think IEEE would be a situation, or sort of the TSB in England, sort of what would be a kind of, do we need a new real kind of group or something that way you can actually get everybody together in a room and then come out with some really, really good solutions. And the second, I would say, is for everybody, the role of Europe in all of this. I mean, we just come out of the kickoff of the I consortium, where we see sort of Cisco, General Electric, sort of AT&T, sort of coming together, really, really big time, it seems. I heard that there's like 28 partners in like under 6 months. Seems like a lot of architectural sort of aligning is going on protocol standards, all kinds of layers. Whereas Europe in this debate, and sort of if we compare this what's, for example, going on in China, where out of the last Chinese government, out of the 11 top politicians, 9 were engineers, which is sort of basically that China is already running the country like an IoT platform for the past 10, 15 years. So where would that leave us in Europe? That would be a question for everybody. Please.
Future of Europe, anyone?
So first question, seems as that was to me. I think that the problem with trying to set up a forum to do this is it's going to be another IoT forum. You know, there are loads of them out there that have that mission. As you say, the TSB in the UK is doing it. The trouble with the TSB initiatives is they're UK-centric. The trouble with some of the other forums is that they're coming at it from a point of view of standardisation rather than cooperation. And there's nothing wrong with standardisation, but what we're finding is that actually it's becoming a natural process through forums like this that we meet and discuss with like-minded companies, and it's comparatively recently. You know, we've had this view for a long time that actually the way that you're going to succeed in this space is by collaboration and finding partners where together you can extend the value proposition, and then figuring out the rest. You know, maybe even project by project. I think the first time that I actively heard other companies talking about that was at an event in February this year. So it's taken the market a little while to kind of realise it. I think now the market has realised it. I think companies are having those discussions. I think companies are aligning, maybe not necessarily in the most effective way, but they are finding each other, and I think you're going to start seeing these ecosystems forming much more closely. Of course, some of the technology partners that feed through have a part to play. So, you know, Wind River Intel, for example, have realigned their strategy to become an organisation that is much more about pulling demand through rather than trying to push it through people that happen to design their chips onto stuff. So again, some of it I think is going to come from those large organisations. But at the moment, for better or worse, I think it's going to be those sorts of informal things where people come together and you know, like-minded people happen to find each other and happen to realise that together they've got a better story than separately. I think also those will be dynamic relationships. You know, you look at anyone that's on this panel, and you know, at a point in time, the relationship may make sense to be with one or other of us, and then down the road, for whatever reason, that dynamic may change. You know, and I think we are going to have this very fluid arrangement. And the problem that gives us, and the problem that gives end users, you know, we all know that ultimately, under current business models, end users like to have one guy to beat up when stuff isn't working. And that then leads to the ecosystem wanting to take margin on margin on margin on margin, and that makes the whole thing expensive. So contractually we've got to figure out a way to handle that between ourselves and with end users, and that may be some sort of more formal consortia arrangements. I don't know, but that's work that certainly needs looking at and needs to be addressed.
Any other thoughts? Just to highlight, though, we've only got a few minutes left before we run out of time.
I'd like just to add a little bit. I completely agree with you, and there's a lot of stuff already happening. And you brought up an interesting point: China versus Europe versus US. So, full disclosure, working for Wind River, US company, part of Intel, part of the Industrial Internet Consortia, part of Open Interconnect Consortia as well. So we are in these groups. However, if you look at them, they started out as very US dominated. And maybe there is, by some of the players also some thought of, let's, be dominant in that space. But you see that Schneider joined, you see that Bosch joined, so you see European companies chiming in. And in fact, at the end, it's the customer deciding. So they really want to have an open ecosystem. It's not that you can dominate it from the US. And also you brought up the, China probably already connected. Well, I do spend some time of my travel over there, and I wouldn't be worried about that. They definitely appreciate the standards being made in Europe. They love the IEC 61508 standard, so they adopt all the standards we do over here, and it's a nice, work together. And also in other spaces, just to add as a sign, IEEE working on getting time-sensitive networking into 802.1 standard, which is a real key element to have an open real-time communication standard in the standard Ethernet. So a lot of stuff is really happening, and the only thing I can say is really, everybody should join in and do their part, because it's not going to happen that we wait, sit back, and somebody else is doing this for us. We have to be part of it and actively driving it.
I would have a comment, and actually following up on this, on being open. That's actually one of the for me, one of the key aspects. I mean, if you're waiting for a standard, whatever it is in terms of hardware, in terms of connectivity, in terms of applications, I mean, there are standards. There are standards, and there are hundreds of them, or thousands of them actually. So if you wait to have a standard to move in that space, well, you'll be late in the game. And what is important is really to work with, let's say, an open ecosystem with different type of partners that are needed to deliver the overall solutions, and have those tools to leverage this openness and be able to connect to whatever devices, whatever applications, whatever back-end systems, to lower the cost of all these elements and the overall end-to-end solution. So having the right tools to leverage that is very important, and do not wait for standardization that comes from different bodies. I mean, the capabilities, the individual elements are there. We just need to have the right tools to work with these different partners in an open way.
Those are comments?
No, in fact, I do agree with that. I think that standards, of course, are important, and sometimes the ecosystem is waiting too much about that. So it's there is a train to be taken, and standards are coming in. We are talking about the 5G, and we are a part of it. But so just let's do it. Everything is here.
And sorry, just on that with standards, I get so annoyed by it in forums. So often I end up contributing. Yeah, when we talk about standards, everyone seems to talk about what's the standard protocol going to be for the Internet of Things, and you know what? There ain't going to be one. You know, if you step back and think about it for 2 seconds, the notion that you're going to come up with one protocol that will work on a really lightweight sensor on a wall. That's connected via a bit of wet string that's operating at a really low bandwidth, and you're going to use exactly the same protocol for something that's a capable device connected via high bandwidth Ethernet. You know, those things are completely different and will use different protocols. all the time that we as an industry perpetuate that debate, then actually what we say to end users is, this is another VHS Betamax Video 2000. So anyone who's old enough for me, those are old standards for things before we had compact discs to record stuff on, for tapes for video recorders. By general consent, Betamax was by far the better technical solution. VHS actually went on to win because it was backed by bigger industry players. But end users, while they think there's a debate in the industry, that will stop them actively investing and making decisions because they don't want to back the one that's going to be obsolete in 2 years. So standards are important. They're far more important actually to look at platform layer, at interoperability layer, at API layer, rather than specific protocols. So.
Thank you, everybody. I think at that point we should stop. We're a few minutes over time, but we should stop, although it's been an extremely interesting panel. Some very interesting presentations. I've enjoyed it. I hope everyone in the audience has too. But I think at this point we should thank our panelists.